Why do we have guns on the property?
Guns are a useful tool for the management, and by management I mean disposing of in a humane and rapid manner feral animals.
Okay, so it's not, we're not under attack from any foreign bodies, or are we? No.
Well, the camels are a foreign body because they're an introduced pest.
Okay.
So are the horses, so are the donkeys, and so are the wild dogs.
So who decides what's a pest and what isn't a pest?
So there's a couple of bodies that do decide this, and it's if they have an impact on the economic sustainability of an industry or the environment.
Okay.
So that's where cane toads. Cane toads don't actually eat your sugar cane, but they do kill your native wildlife. And so then the camels, they don't eat your native wildlife, but they do eat the food that the animals out here do eat and rely on. It's not very well established, and it's not very well known to a lot of the Australians that we even have these animals as ferals. The estimate on the population of wild or feral camels here in Australia at this stage, up to 4 million camels that are affecting the central part of Australia. Now, it's hard to get a good figure on that because the last time that the number was established was in 2008, and there's been no studies since, so we're just guessing now. So then when we roll into some of the other species, we've got estimates with the feral horses being in the numbers near 400,000. When we first got to Prenty, the estimate was 400 horses on the property. Since then, we've removed nearly 4,000 horses from the property. That is massive misestimation. And now if we start to look at that being just one property, and we can start spreading that out over the rest of Australia, we do not know how bad it actually is.
I've been here for a couple of months. It doesn't look like there's much food out there to me, Jack. The ferals, if they come in and they're eating that food, are they, that the cattle should be eating?
Yeah, so what they're doing is they're eating the food that the cattle could be eating.
Yep.
And our statistics are based on, for the regeneration, the number of cattle we have. And so we'll say that a water point needs to have 80 to 100 head of cattle, and you're looking at it and you're saying, yes, our numbers are within the range, but for some reason the food's going backwards. The food's not there anymore. What's going on? Are the cows getting fatter? But it could simply be that there's other competition. You've got horses, camels or donkeys that are eating the food that your cattle rely on.
We're pretty much on the edge of the desert here, aren't we, Jack?
Yeah, we are on the fringe. In fact, Prenty's a part of desert.
4 million camels in Australia.
Yes.
And I assume they're mainly in the desert or in Broome. Yeah. So the question is, where's the rest of the 4 million? And they're mainly in Central Australia. So you would see, because we're on the edge of the desert, then from a feral perspective, the majority of yours would be camels. What other ferals are you dealing with out here at Prenty?
Look, not so many horses, because our management plan for those was very efficient.
Okay.
And we do have donkeys out here as well. Then we have a couple of small ferals, say wild dogs, rabbits and foxes.
Can you run the same amount of cattle here per acre than you can, say, in the Kimberley or in the Pilbara?
No. So there's a couple of factors behind that, and it's to do with the food on offer.
Okay.
And the rate of regeneration.
Okay.
So we don't have the same grasslands or the Downs country, which, despite being called Prenty Downs, we don't have that same strong country that can sustain heavy grazing. And we don't have that reliable tropical rainfall, which rejuvenates the land and promotes the growth.
Right.
So we are marginal here, and as you said, we're on the edge of the desert, so we are front line to the camel incursion.
Whose responsibility is it to manage the camel and other pests in this region?
So on a pastoral lease, it is part of the conditions of your lease that you must manage the feral population. If you're not controlling the feral animals on your lease, you're in breach of that. However, nothing has ever been done about it.
Okay. Okay. So the government has determined what animals are feral or pests, and as a pastoral leaseholder, you are responsible to manage those pests within your remit.
Yes.
Okay.
And then outside of that, it's a little grey because you've got vacant Crown land, which is now under traditional ownership.
Yep.
And so then it would fall into the traditional owners being responsible for the management of feral populations there, but they didn't bring them here. So it's unfair that they would be persecuted and forced to manage a problem that wasn't of their making. That responsibility should be on the British government.
That, with the ashes coming up.
Yes.
I really like that, Jack. If you didn't manage the ferals and the pests, would you still be able to run a cattle station out here profitably?
It would not be a sustainable business if you did not manage the rangelands.
Yep.
And by managing the rangelands, you need to manage the ferals.
Yep.
If you're not managing that, you're not going to be producing cattle.
Yep.
Which means you're not going to be here to look after the land.
Yep.
So you need to look after the feral animals to make sure that you've got something there for your cattle to graze.
Yep.
Which means you've got a reason to be here.
Right. When you're doing feral management, what do? Do you do it via a car? Do you do it via a helicopter? How do you do feral management out here and is it on a daily basis, a monthly basis, an annual basis?
We carry firearms every day that we're at work.
Okay.
And it's for those bump encounters when you do come across them when you're travelling.
Yep.
We, however, do have some methods which are always in place, and our number one is back to that water, managing that water, and we protect those with the yard design that we have.
Okay.
And that will prevent camels from getting into the yards or prevent them from getting out of the yards. So what it does is it's usually a deterrent, and that's why we regularly check our water points to ensure that we don't have a camel in the yards like we did the other day.
Yeah.
Because they can keep the cattle out of the yards, which means they're not going to be drinking. The self-mustering yards that we use, we're also extremely efficient at controlling the horses and the donkeys.
Okay.
Because they watch and they learn, and they're very quick to learn that. And so taking them out was easy.
Yep.
Well, it was simple to do, but it wasn't an easy task.
Yeah, understood. Okay, so you carry a rifle with you wherever you go because I see ferals on a daily basis out here. Is there a best practice guideline or whatever for control or management of pests?
Yes. So the federal government, as part of their feral camel management plan, released a standard operating procedure and a code of practice for the control of large feral vertebrates.
Okay.
And that runs through the best methods that they had for controlling the feral vertebrates that we have in Australia.
Yep.
And that discussed the value of ground shooting, aerial operations, and the use of trap yards or self-mustering yards for that control.
Yep.
And we follow those guidelines where we can for the ground shooting, the self-mustering yards, but also the aerial operations as was certified to carry and discharge firearms from aircraft for the control of feral animals.
Yeah, right. You know, what's really interesting to me as a city slicker is, you know, as a kid I was always down the farm and now coming out to the station, and because you work animals, your whole life is animals. I can see if the kids are cruel to an animal, or if they're cruel to a cat or one of the dogs or one of the things, the parents are straight on top of them. So the respect that you guys have for animals and the understanding you have is much better, much closer than most people would ever have experience with. So, and having worked with you over the last couple of months, and the way that we control the pests here, and the commitment to the humane treatment of the animals, I think it really should be noted. It's not. There's this sort of perception that it's a big cowboy thing and guys come out and they have a big blood sport shoot and that. But I can't speak for that. But what I can speak for is the observations I've had and being at the station and seeing what's done. And it's a business. It's professionally done and it's humanely done. Is that consistent across all properties, Jack, or is
livestock producers rely on livestock?
Yeah.
So you have to love your animals to be able to just survive.
Yep.
And so there is an inherent respect for any living animal.
Yep.
And for me, it extends so far with the camel because of the adverse conditions that they can survive in.
Yep.
And so property owners have a respect for the animals.
Yeah.
And it becomes difficult. We have a lot of members of public who want to do their part and want to help, but there is a very small element of people who do not seek permission and they do not have respect for the animals, and they will cause serious damage and undue stress to animals. And it's a lot of the time it can be ignorance.
Yep.
About not knowing where to shoot an animal to get ethical control.
Yep.
It can be buck fever. So, you panic and, we've got to pull the trigger. Now, I can say this with confidence and authority. There is no shortage of camels in Australia. You will see another one. And when you've got the right shot, you can take it. So don't rush the shot. There's that, and then there's just the callous brutality, people that it doesn't matter if it's going to be a camel or if it's going to be a dog in the street, they're going to kick it.
Yep.
So there is that bad element.
Yeah.
And they bring a lot of disrepute to the respectful nature that a lot of people who deal with firearms have.
Yeah. No, it's great. It's a great window into part of station life that's not well known. I know it polarises people, but I think the more people understand about the need, the size of the problem, the magnitude of the problem, and the professional way that it's dealt with, in line with government legislation and with best practices for pastoral ownership. We hope that people understand it, and educated customer works in our favour.
Yeah, absolutely. And I fall back to the statistics. We need to collect that data.
Yep.
We like to keep a record of the locations, the dates, and the type of animals that we are managing, and so we can get a bit of a heat map on the station for where we're likely to come across animals.
Yep.
We've also done a program where we took out somewhere around 200 camels as pet meat.
Yep.
In a dedicated program.
Okay.
And that was run extremely professionally, and I've never been so glad to see something positive happening. There's been a lot of reports commissioned.
Yep.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars spent paying for someone's doctorate, and no action has come out of it.
Yep.
And so we've generally taken the action ourselves.
Yep.
Or in conjunction with some entrepreneurial people.
Yep.
And had an impact. And it's that private industry is the way to manage this problem.
Yep.
But we just need to be able to have the tools to do that, to follow the code of practice as close as we can. So given that we've identified the current estimates for the total grazing pressure, also the feral animal populations in the region have been wildly inaccurate to date, we have a solution and a way that we're working on to be able to identify the actual numbers. And that's where it's critically important for us to use video monitoring for our water points. We want to take that further so that we can identify the number of feral animals, the number of other animals that are using the water points, and therefore we can work out what the total grazing pressure is. It's never been done accurately, and we're pushing forwards to be able to try and achieve this, because you cannot manage it if you cannot measure it. And that is fundamental to operations out here. If you don't have any metrics, if you've got no data, you can't enact a measurable plan. At this stage, it's very simple, the management, and it's a observe, decide, implement, and observe again. And what we want to do is drive this to an intelligent platform, to an intelligent decision making, where we've got the statistics to back up and to substantiate the results that we're having.
You'll have more data to work with so that you manage them in a more effective way, is it?
Well, it's also just managing the land in a more effective way.
Yeah, right.
So if you decided that you don't want to shoot the horses or do anything with the horses, reduce your cattle stocking rate. Get rid of your cattle, let the horses run.
Yep.
Pretty simple.
Yeah.
If you're not gonna manage the horses, just get rid of the cattle.
Yeah, right.
Well, it's a balance. It's a trade-off.
Yeah.
You know, what do you want to run? Do you want to be profitable and run cattle, or do you want to have your rangelands degraded and run down by making sure that you keep horses around because they look nice? No one's introducing new genetics to the horses out here, so they're inbred. No, we're on Prenty Downs, and it was less than 34 horses, so that's one per water point, were released, and we've taken out 4,000.
4,000 horses?
Yes.
On Prenty Downs alone?
Yes.
Okay, so that is plague proportions that people just don't understand.
Yeah.
And also the impact it has on the environment and the ability to run, you know, a viable and sustainable industry out here.
Well, it's ignorance to think that you can do nothing with the ferals and still run the same amount of cattle as you're, recommended to.
Yep.
And it's a shame. I can understand the sentimentality that, yes, we built this country on horses and camels, but you can keep a couple of horses, sterilise them, and yeah, you can have them out and about. Go for it, do that, but don't let them breed. It's like making sure that your cat's desexed, which we do have feral cats out here.
Yep.
And we're in an area where we've got endangered species of birds, and cats like birds.
Okay. So one of the other things you have out here is feral cats.
Yes.
Wow.
Now the feral cats out here don't look like Nira, the girl's cat.
No.
They are more leopard than anything.
Right.
And they will give you a run for your money.
Right. That's really interesting, Jack, that some of the threatened species that are native to Australia...
They're identified in this region, yeah.
Okay. And so if you have feral cats, they're going to hook into those pretty quickly.
Yes. There are some native parrots around that don't fare well to cats.
Yeah. So because you've got Lake Carnegie and Lake Wells and you've got salt lakes all around, and when you have the big rains, you can get a lot of water and a lot of migratory birds possibly coming in and out. It's just another angle on managing ferals and that knock-on effect to, if you don't manage ferals, what happens? And then, you start losing the actual native birds to Australia that we're trying to protect, and they're threatened already. It just goes on and on and on. So you can never look at any of this like a feral. You take even one of the animals, there's a knock-on effect, isn't there, for every single one. So you can't look at any of these things in isolation, which I think a lot of people probably do, without understanding the responsibilities of the landowner or the consequences of not managing those pests.
Well, and I think the most valuable tool that Australia has is people that love the land. And if you're out here and you're living out here and you're here 365, or, you know, make sure you get a holiday.
I will, Jack.
If you're out here for the majority of your time, you can see things that someone that's doing a study tour for 10 days will not see.
Yeah.
Land managers are the best positioned to be able to take action and to measure that action.
Yep.
And I think there should be a whole lot more support for that.
Yep.
And it's unfortunate that the rangelands aren't being identified clearly enough as an area of strong biodiversity and a great area for conservation, but it's conservation land management. Again, locking up and leaving it doesn't work, because this area needs to be managed. It's been managed for a long time before we were here as well. And you need to make sure that the population of animals that are eating the grasses are under control, but that the grasses are getting eaten so that you don't get fires coming through, which will take out the trees, they'll take out the old growth spinifex. There needs to be a balance and a level of management and care. We've got a lot to learn, but it's the only way that we're going to be able to make sure that Australia keeps its unique landscapes.